All right. Good evening, everybody. Glad you came back. Or do we have anyone who wasn't here last week? Yeah. Glad you came. Good. So just a quick kind of recap and then introduction, and then Doug and I will just get out of the way. And if you weren't here last week, or if you need a refresher, so we spent most of the time just talking about all these places in the Bible that have stories of immigrants or people who find themselves in a place that's not native to them, not their homeland, which we figured out by looking through all these texts that's almost everybody. Like basically all of the major characters in the Bible are not always just staying in the place that they were born, right? They're immigrants, people on the move. It's part of God's story that we see. And then, of course, there are lots of laws about how we treat those strangers, immigrants, foreigners among us, and that's how God judges us as a society in the Old Testament based on that. So this isn't just an issue that, people are talking about immigration, let's do immigration. This is a big theme throughout our scriptures that we have to take seriously, right, as followers of Jesus. So we talked a lot about that last week, and this week we get to hear from some people who actually know more about the life experience of some of our immigrant neighbors here. And so just as a reminder, what's the phrase that you always say at Pub Theology, Doug?
No cliches.
Well, that's another one.
You can fight, but leave as friends.
We have to leave as friends, yeah.
Yeah. So we can argue, we can have totally different views, and let's also agree to leave as friends and be respectful to one another. So let's do that. So it is my pleasure to welcome to you Diane and Flannery. So they'll tell you a lot about their organizations that they work for, CRIS and Riverview International Center, but both organizations that deal with caring for the needs of immigrants in our area. So can you welcome them?
Hello. Oh, is this working? It is. I just can't hear it. Hi, everyone. My name is Flannery. I work at Community Refugee and Immigration Services, or CRIS, and I am joined by Diana, who works literally right across the street from us at the Riverview International Center. So together we're going to be talking about some of the people that we serve. We have, slightly different organizations, so our missions are a little bit different, but a lot of the work that we do is very similar. So we're going to be going back and forth. We didn't talk about this before, but I feel comfortable answering questions whenever. And I'm imagining some people may have questions. So to get us started, I'm going to just introduce CRIS a little bit. So we are celebrating our 31st year here in Central Ohio. Our mission is to help refugees and immigrants first find safety and stability, and then work with them towards self-sufficiency and successful integration into our community. And that means something different for every single one of our clients. Because they come from different circumstances, they have different challenges, and they have different strengths. So these are our main programs at the moment. Of course, a big part of becoming self-sufficient is learning the language and becoming employed. So we help our clients do that as soon as possible by attending ESL classes and coming to our employment program. We also help with legal services to help people apply for different changes in status and visas. We have our health and wellness program to help refugees with longer-term care needs. We have our VOCA program, Victims of Crime Assistance, which is available to anyone, actually, who has been a victim of the crime in the United States, who needs assistance navigating the justice system. Although many of our clients are maybe low English proficiency and need some extra help if they're trying to press charges against someone, maybe file for a protective order. So that program helps them navigate that system. We have our family services, which helps with parenting and young children with different disabilities. We have our senior program and our youth mentorship program as well. So these are our numbers from fiscal year 2024. which I know is a couple years ago already, but a lot has changed in the last year. I'm going to talk a bit more about it. So I wanted to show you what our sort of normal years looked like, our normal work. So in 2024, we had 809 refugees resettle in Columbus through our organization. So these are refugees who come through the State Department and through the United Nations who are fleeing persecution and violence to find safety and stability here in Central Ohio. We helped 184 refugees secure jobs through our employment program. We specifically helped Haitians and Ukrainians through our newcomer support services that was available to them. We had 840 hours of direct parenting support. We connected 113 refugees with mental health services. We have our CRIS youth mentorship program in 12 different school districts here in Central Ohio. And finally, we served 204 refugee seniors, helped them navigate their healthcare needs, and also combat challenges like isolation and loneliness. And I'll hand it over to Diane to introduce the RIC.
I'm Diane Linton, and I work at the Riverview International Center. And like CRIS, that's a lot of words. So for CRIS, we say CRIS, and for the Riverview International Center, we say the RIC. So the RIC and CRIS. Our mission is to empower our new American neighbors by supporting individuals, strengthening families, and nurturing community. But that doesn't tell exactly what, and we're getting more into that. But basically, they're evolving needs, jobs, education, building relationships and resources, healthcare, things like that. So the main thing you might want to know, and people ask us all the time, because CRIS has been around, what year did you say? 49? 47? Oh, 30. I thought you said. Okay, there goes the memory. 31 years, and this is our 10th year. We are smaller than CRIS, so people will say, oh, I've heard of CRIS. We hear this all the time. How are you different than CRIS? And this will be talked about as we go along, because so much that we do is similar, but mainly it's how we receive people. So all those numbers that Flannery showed are people who are coming and escaping from another place, another country, and then there's a resettlement time period, and that when that time period is over, they can still help, but they're also becoming more and more busy with the new people coming, and we help people as they go along way beyond that, even years later. We will talk about people, because people still need help. CRIS also still helps people later, but we are focused, they're focused mostly on the new, from what I hear. You can even tell about some of these other things. So, okay. And then, so I just want to tell kind of what our services are through this story. So our office started on Riverview Drive, hence the name. Riverview Drive is just south of Riverside Hospital and near University Village in that area. Riverview Drive is a little kind of country in itself. Especially if you go on a nice summer evening and you drive down there, you will find many immigrants. It feels like you're in a different country. And our apartment was very small. This picture is just the living room of our apartment where we started, but we called it the office. And so Rokia, who had lived here on Riverview Drive for 20 years, 70 years old, lived there 20 years from Bangladesh, whenever she met any new person coming through the diversity visa lottery program from Bangladesh, she'd say, come to the RIC, they will help you. So in this case, she knocked on the door and said, Dion, new people, find a job. That's what my job was, to help people find jobs. And so I said, okay. And I met Aisha and her twin 8-year-old boys, no English, and she was very shy. Kept putting her hand up here like this. So, but after we talked and started talking over our next appointments, I found out that Aisha had been a professor at Ankapar College in Bangladesh for 5 years. She did know English, but like we often are, have not practiced speaking it or listening to it, and so she was shy to speak. So we practiced her interviews, practiced all sorts of things to get ready for the interview, and she ended up getting a job right down the street where she could walk at the Marriott Hotel right on Olentangy River Road, a nice hotel, and she was the first of many of our neighbors to get a job there, and that became an extended part of our community. Still to this day, even though we moved off to Old Henderson Road next to CRIS, we still help people get jobs at that location. So after that, I would see her in the office, and she'd very loudly, for her small stature, Diane, thank you, and give me a big hug. And I heard she did that at the Marriott, too, to the HR director every morning. Dan, thank you, good morning. So Aisha came because of job help, so employment help. But like many other people who come for a certain way, she also said, I need help with my boys, enrolling them in school. So we helped enroll them in school. One of them had trouble with one of the medical tests, so we helped navigate through that. Oh, you have homework help. She came to homework help every night, stood right between the two boys, correcting their answers. That's not normal. Normally the parents stay in the other room, but she did that. And then she saw that there was a computer class, and she wanted to do typing. I called it my typing as a second language class, and she did that. Like everybody always wants English. She came to the English classes and then took a sewing class. We had a sewing class going on. All this in this little apartment. And to add about that sewing class, a year later when COVID hit, she asked to borrow the sewing machine and take it home and to start making masks. Because at that time, if you remember, we ran out of masks and we were making it all out of all sorts of things. And then she and her husband made a YouTube video to share with her friends at Bangladesh on this is how you make a mask on YouTube. So over the time, there were citizenship classes. She became a citizen after 5 years, and then she bought a house. And she and her husband bought a house. And when they bought a house, they lived near Sawmill in Bethel, and she needed a new job she could get to easily, and she got hired at the Walmart. And to this day, you will see her there at the automatic little checkout at that Walmart there. And within 2 months, she sent me that picture because she got most employee of the month at Walmart. And when last time I saw her, she showed me pictures of her boys on running track, and they're way taller than she is. So that kind of shows the programs. Nurturing community was one of the things there, and we had some women in Rachel, our career one of our career specialists. There were several women who were asking for, their English was pretty good, they had advanced degrees, and so she started an advanced women's group to teach extra things, and this is at a field trip at the library to hear a speaker. And Hamida also has a women's empowerment group, and those women practice English, write in journals, learn about topics, and go on field trips, and this is at Lynn's farm. Our numbers, people ask, where do people come from? Because anybody can come with a different other kind of visas besides being a refugee. About 50% at this point, this is from 2005, from Algeria, and then going down from there, Afghanistan, Morocco, Bangladesh, and so on there. In 2025, we helped 2,031 individuals, and then we count how many times people come in. So 12,000, over 12,000 service visits, 60 countries last year. And I mentioned the meals and the diapers. We don't offer payment for anything. Rent, unless there's a special thing going on, or like when we got displaced, that's when we helped with rent. But we do have the diaper bank that comes once a month that we partner with, and we distribute diapers. And we have 2 food pantries that come once a month, and we distribute food from there. Ways to partner. Or do you have your own?
So Diane and I both mentioned a couple of different statuses. We're throwing that around. And I think these days it's really important to go through who these people are and what different statuses mean, because sometimes these words are used incorrectly. So we just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. So an immigrant is anyone who is not a citizen or a national in the United States who currently lives here. There are so many ways to come as an immigrant. These are all of the different ways you can get your green card through as an immigrant in the United States. Although I will say some of these have been paused recently. Refugee and asylee is just one tiny little, where is it? There it is. Can you see my thing? Yep, one tiny little way to do that. My mom is Canadian. She came on a fiancé visa and has stayed on that green card for the last 30-something years. Maybe one day she'll become a citizen. But there are so many ways you can come here and stay here as an immigrant in the United States.
Can I add on that too? We hear green card thrown around there. What that means is a permanent resident card. And as we hear more in the media, that is the goal, to have a green card. That is the thing that you are safe to be in this country, a permanent resident card. And then to become a citizen, generally you need to be here often, at least a certain amount of years, usually 5, but not always. And you had to practice for the citizenship test and go through all of that. So you could stay here with just a green card and still be okay. But when some people, you don't get all the benefits of being a citizen.
Mm-hmm. And you do have to sort of reapply for that green card, so it is not a one-time thing. At first, it's like every few years, and then it grows to every 10 years that you have that green card be renewed. And people will come and make sure that you are being a good member of your community and that you're here for the right reasons, and then you'll get a green card renewal. Thank you. A lot of the people that we work with at CRIS are refugees. And a refugee is someone who's had to flee their home country because of war, violence, or persecution based on one of these 5 protected grounds as decided by the United Nations. So that's race, religion, nationality, membership of a social group, or political opinion. And thousands of people apply for refugee status globally every year. But in order to receive that refugee status, you have to prove that you are who you say you are, and that you're fleeing what you say you're fleeing. So it can be a very difficult task just to receive that refugee status. And many people are denied through their application process. Now, an asylum seeker, I think we hear this term used a lot, is very similar to a refugee in that they're often fleeing exactly the same things that refugees are fleeing. But instead of arriving at the United Nations office to receive that refugee status, they're instead arriving at a port of entry in the country where they want to receive asylum. So we often think of the southern border when we think about asylum seekers, but they can come at any port of entry. I used to work at an asylum seeker shelter in New York City where people would arrive in JFK. So they can come at any port of entry, and when they arrive, they declare that they are seeking asylum in the United States. And at that point in time, they are then held in a detention center for an indefinite period of time while the United States government decides if they have a good case for asylum. And if they decide that they do, they will then be released and given a court date. Usually right now it's like 16 to 18 months into the future, where that person will have to go and basically plead their case for asylum in the U.S. to stay here as an asylee and have that path towards a green card. Once again, people apply for this status, they can be rejected, and at that point they're then potentially deported. And this is a very vulnerable time in somebody's life because when they arrive here and they're released from that detention center, they're usually not able to work legally and not able to access any public benefits. And so a lot of times they have to fully rely on their community, on the giving of people, churches, groups who are willing to help support them during that time that they're waiting for that court case. Now, I'm assuming you all maybe have heard the term TPS thrown around a lot. Is that right? Yeah. Especially people from Haiti who are here on temporary protected status. So for this presentation, I'm going to conflate humanitarian parole and TPS, which I once did in front of a lawyer, and they got very mad at me for that. But for this presentation, we're just going to assume they're the same thing. And they're very similar. So both of these allow people to stay in the United States for a temporary amount of time without fear of deportation. Because of a situation that's going on in their home country, that means it's unsafe for them to return. So that could be because of an ongoing armed conflict, an environmental disaster. Places like Haiti, they have sort of both happening at the same time. And so the government will decide, okay, it's unsafe for people who are here from Haiti to go back home. So we are going to give them 6 months, 12 months, 18 months of safety from deportation, and then at the end of that time, we'll decide if we're going to re-up that TPS. And so Congress and the government will decide that, and a lot of these TPS designations have been revoked in the last year, which means that these individuals who were staying here are now at risk for deportation and become undocumented individuals. I also want to point out that historically, the reason that the government would get rid of a TPS is because it was safe for somebody to return home, right, in their home country. But a lot of what's happening now, I think it's hard to argue that it's safe for someone to go back to Afghanistan. That's still held, Kabul is still held by the Taliban. So it's become a little bit more of a politicized and political tool rather than just a way to keep people safe. And lastly, undocumented immigrants. People call these immigrants illegal as well, although I prefer the term undocumented. We usually think of people who crossed into the United States without inspection when we think about undocumented immigrants. But a lot of people who are currently undocumented came here legally, had a visa or some kind of form of protection, and then overstayed that visa, or their form of protection was revoked, like that TPS, change in TPS. We also have dreamers who are on DACA. Those are people who were brought into the United States before the age of 16. So they have a deferred deportation, which is right now at risk for a lot of people who maybe came here at 2 or 3 years old and are now being told that they may have to go back to a country that they've never remembered being in.
When we moved on Riverview Drive and opened that little apartment, somebody said, you better start seeing who's coming. And so we started looking, and everybody was getting a diversity visa lottery. Our founder didn't know what that was, I didn't know what that was, and our other person didn't know what that was there. And often it's not talked about. So I'm gonna say that, tell about that next in the next screen a little bit more. But here's who our other immigrant neighbors. I put down refugees and asylees. You already talked about that. Following the resettlement period from CRIS or other organizations is also who we help, but definitely not the majority. The majority is still diversity visa lottery winners. Also, a lot of foreign graduate and PhD students, TPS. People also, and victims of trafficking, who we often send to CRIS because they have help there. The diversity visa program is also called the Green Card Lottery. It was created in the 90s to actually, our country said we needed more diversity to diversify our country. And it made a pathway to come. And the countries that we didn't have many people coming from, there was a list, there still is a list every year of who those countries are. If your country is listed, then you can apply to come here for the lottery. So often you're not getting people who are escaping issues. These people are choosing to come here. So I was hearing, and I learned more about it too, and heard the stories about people that it's a lot of people will apply, and they'll apply year after year until they get in, if at all. So when you do get your name drawn, you have to go through an interview with somebody from the United States, and you have to have a certain level of education, a certain level of money, not much, about $7,000, and pass all the documentation, and then you can come. And what do you get? Unlike all the other things that were mentioned, here, the steps to a green card, you get the green card. But you get no help when you arrive. You don't get assigned anywhere. You choose where you go, and you have no help, and you need to find a job right away. So people were moving to Riverview Drive. There's a mosque there, one of the oldest ones, and traditionally in countries, the mosque is the one that helps. And so they would choose it because there was a mosque there, and they're going to help me. And then also more people started moving there, and saying, you can come here. And that's why it's there. So we had a lot of people from Bangladesh. I mentioned that earlier, and then it got cut off a few years ago. So we don't have many new people from Bangladesh. However, the people we met back then, we still see for lots of things, and so we still see people from Bangladesh. But basically, it's once you have more than 50,000 people from that country, it kind of gets cut off, and they're ineligible. So that is one way. You were going to mention this one, and then I was going to do the other two.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Oh, yes, right.
Just to look at what's happening in the world right now, there are about 117.3 million forcibly displaced people. To give context of how that's changed recently, I have been working at CRIS for about 5.5 years now. Started September of 2020 in the middle of COVID, and have been doing presentations like this since then. I used to have this exact same slide. The number was 68 million. So it's almost doubled in the last 5.5 years, showing sort of how much conflict and environmental disaster is happening in the world at this moment. So most people are internally displaced, and so they are still within the borders of their home country, but have had to flee their homes for various reasons. We have refugees, asylum seekers, and other people in need of international protection. I want to note that if you're looking at this full statistic or the full group, about 40% are under the age of 18. You're focusing on refugees, which is the majority of our clientele. That statistic grows to about 50%. So about 50% of the world's refugees are children.
That's the world, right? Mm-hmm. And then how many are coming into the United States, or do you know?
How many refugees?
Yeah, like we have none hardly now, so refugees.
Yeah, I don't think I have this slide up in this presentation, but yeah, no, that's fine. I have the numbers in my brain. So since 1980, when we've had the refugee program of officially bringing refugees over, although of course before that we had refugees coming to the United States since the 1600s, and a lot of the people that were doing that hard work were church communities who were sponsoring refugees to come over. Where was I going with this? Since 1980, we've had a steady refugee ceiling, how many refugees are coming in every year. It's changed with every presidency. Back when it started, it was 235,000, which was pretty high. In 2022, it was 125,000, and right now it is 7,500. So it's dropped significantly in the last year, which is why I showed my numbers from 2 years ago, because it would be much lower in terms of how many refugees are coming in. And I will note, too, that the way that they've prioritized the refugees this year is very different. Usually they prioritize it looking at the conflict that's happening in the world.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, the conflicts that are happening in the world and who needs help. But now it is a specific group from a specific country, the Afrikaner population in South Africa, which is a new policy. We've never really seen that happen before. So, yeah.
Okay, so in 2019, a really big study was made for the Columbus metropolitan area, including this area, so we're still referring to it. It shows quite a bit there. So there's a lot of numbers here, but notice that 8.7% of the Columbus metro area are made up of immigrants, and I'm going to show that 26.4%, highlight that, of the population growth in the metro area was attributed to immigrants. We found out in the 2020 census that Columbus is the only city that doesn't show declining population in Ohio. And if we didn't have the immigrants, we would also show declining population. That's a big, interesting thing. So we have the spending power. It's very interesting to see all of this. People who are undocumented, the numbers are shown because it's shown. So there's $15.4 billion from the metro area contributed to the gross whatever the GDP stands for, all of a sudden it escaped my head. Yes, that's right, which is 11.5% of the total. But notice all the spending power, the 10.1% in Columbus, and there's only 8.7% immigrants, but that has gone up. That's a higher amount for the spending power there with 10%. Okay, immigrant challenges.
Next question? Can we do it now? Ask a question?
Oh, yeah, anytime.
I'm curious, your previous to this slide here, you showed 186, Area Code 184. Like-sized cities to Columbus around the country. How do we compare with other comparable cities? You know?
I don't know all the cities, but they talk about all the immigrant people are like, oh, there's immigrants in that city. That's a welcoming city or a welcoming city. We are considered a welcoming city, but not the official welcoming city. There's a certain term that means, but we have wanted to have immigrants come here. There's a lot of jobs, so many jobs that need to be filled that immigrants fill, and it's a huge thing. It's a thing that we hear about from our employers that are losing neighbors. That does not answer your question about how we compare, but we are in the upper part of that, not the lower.
I will say in terms of refugee resettlement, Ohio is the 5th state in terms of states that welcome refugees. So we're doing a lot over here for that.
There are 3 organizations in Columbus who do that. So CRIS, right now it's Jewish Family Services, and ETSS, Ethiopian Thailand. There you go, yeah. Services. This is why we're together.
So we also wanted to just touch on some of the challenges that immigrants are facing right now in our community, nationally. I already talked a little bit about refugee admissions. So we are resettling historically low numbers of refugees since the beginning of the Refugee Act and the refugee program of 1980. And that doesn't just mean that people who were already vetted to come to the United States are still stuck overseas, but it also means that family members who are waiting to be reunited with their family members overseas have to wait even longer. I have clients who have waited 20 plus years to be reunited with their children, their parents, their siblings, their significant others, and now they have to wait at least, another 3 years. We also have the travel ban and suspended visa application. So this applies to everyone, not just refugees, but it can apply to refugees too. So there are dozens of countries that are now no longer able to come into the United States. And if those individuals are already here, they have had their green card and visa application suspended. So they're kind of in this limbo stage where they have applied for their green card, have applied for a visa, and now they have no way of knowing if that will ever be accepted because it's been suspended, which could mean that they would immediately become undocumented and then have to stop working, have to change their whole life to figure out what to do. In November of 2025, I think everybody remembers when SNAP was temporarily cut, but for refugees, it was actually permanently cut. So refugees were allowed to access SNAP benefits or food stamps once they arrived because they're considered a vulnerable population that we want to help. That no longer is true. They have to have a green card to access SNAP, and a lot of their green cards have been suspended. And so we're waiting, and this includes children. So we have a lot of families who are struggling to feed their children now because even though they're employed, maybe they were relying on SNAP for an extra $200, $300 a month to get by, and now they don't have that resource. We also are waiting, October 1st, the same thing will happen with Medicaid, which is even more of a serious concern because while we can fundraise for food cards and pantry boxes for our clients, we can't really do the same for medical care. This will have catastrophic consequences for our clients, but also the community around us, the healthcare community, how they will be able to continue serving people and not being paid for it. And we've talked a lot about how changes in legality and status can happen very quickly in a moment's notice right now. And so we have been sort of on the edge of our seats waiting for Haitian TPS to be suspended. It is currently in the courts. The Supreme Court also just heard a case about it. And really at any moment, our Haitian clients could wake up and all be undocumented. And be at risk for deportation, no longer be allowed to work. And that's a huge concern for us.
I want to add something on that. Yeah. So in February, the date that we mentioned earlier that was going to happen, the night before, a lot of pastors in Columbus were praying, and a lot of pastors were in Springfield praying. We have 30,000 Haitians in Columbus, 15,000 in Springfield, and ICE was all around waiting to arrest the next day. We were trying to figure out how can we help the people. People have been working, some for many, many years. Children in schools, kids were staying home, things like that. And people were hungry. And we got a call. Emily, our executive director, this woman was desperate. She came here from Canal to get one of our food boxes, Canal Winchester, to get one of our food boxes in the northwest side, and we ran out. And so she talked to Emilia, and Emilia said, I will get you a box, and we'll just have it delivered. And we were going to have somebody deliver it, but we realized it was in Canal, so we ended up having it delivered. It didn't work, so Emilia took it herself. And she said, tomorrow's the day you find out. How are you doing? And she says, I believe in God, and God's brought us here, and He's kept us safe the whole time, and that's all we can do. So I'm not too scared. That's what she said. And then it was overturned the next day for the Haitians to have at least maybe 6 more months.
Yeah, we'll see. I think we'll find out in June if they will lose it and when. I also want to mention everything is more expensive now. Every application for our clients to get a driver's license without a green card now is at least $750, which is just asking for people to drive illegally because, unfortunately, Columbus is not the most pedestrian-friendly or public transportation-friendly city. So if you want to work, which you need to work, you have to get a car and you have to drive. And this is just an unsafe practice and seems to be a barrier that doesn't really make very much sense. And finally, fear and isolation. I have noticed the mental well-being of our clients dip significantly in the past year. We have kids not going to school. We have clients who are scared to leave their houses. Especially for clients and refugees who were once scared of being kidnapped, being taken by their government for their political ideas, and then now having kind of the same thing and the same fear happening again is re-traumatizing them. And this can lead to physical health decline, and it's a real concern of ours.
A lot of people quitting their jobs out of fear. The green card, one more thing I wanted to add with the green cards is that people also, we were talking about being suspended, but a lot of our people, they do have green cards, or they've already been approved for green cards, but now those have been paused too. You have the green card, you're accepted, but we can't send you the green card. There's obviously, we know about the hostility, the illegalization. That's what we're calling people who were illegal and now will not be. We already talked about that. Unjust and often violent enforcement tactics and loss of funding for many immigrant serving groups. Loss of funding so much for CRIS and many others in town because of grants and things like that, and loss of funding for the places that also serve lower income people, like food pantries, things like that. So what has been happening now, we were around Christmas time, a lot of ICE agents came and people were really coming, and then in February it built up again. It seems like it's a lot less. We're hearing a lot less that's happening. So the more you hear and everybody's talking about it, the more fear that rises. And I don't know how about you, do you feel a little less fear? You you have people who we have mostly green card people. So but the fear when it first started is that the green card people were being arrested too, and they had to prove that they were green card holders and all that. But then some people, the green card holders, it just depends on how fearful you are. If you're just scared and I just don't want to have anybody even ask me, that might keep you inside. I know we want to do this and do it quickly, but I do know we're running towards the end. Do you have any questions along the way to say?
Can I ask, how do you manage the language barrier? I mean, do you have all kinds of people that speak all these different languages when they come through your doors?
Yeah, our staff is very diverse, many of them former refugees themselves, and that's the only way we can do what we do. We do have like phone interpretation because we do have clients who have very niche language needs, but we have staff from all over the world who are able to speak many different languages. My very close coworker speaks 8 different languages. Not me, can't do that. But it's important for the language. It's also important for the culture, too. Having cultural and religious knowledge is also very important for our work. So it's not easy. We like to say a language barrier is not a problem. It's a reason to get creative. It can be frustrating, of course. But I find that there's a lot more universal language than we realize when we're trying to communicate with someone who may not speak English.
And that's kind of a follow-up. Do you know if in any legal procedure, are they legally obligated to provide a translator for somebody?
Yes, they are legally obligated in a number of settings, including in a legal procedure, also like at a hospital. That said, I don't always have faith that is being followed correctly, especially when a client maybe speaks a specific dialect and that's harder to find an interpreter for. They may just say, oh, well, they speak a little bit of French, so we're just going to use French, even though they can't fully comprehend that language. So that's something that our VOCA team, actually our Victims of Crime Assistance Program, is really trying to advocate for, is proper interpretation. They've also started to use AI interpretation on police phone calls, which can be really dangerous because if AI gets it wrong, which we know it does, that could be a life or death situation if you're using that interpretation when somebody's calling for help. So
I'm going to say something about the English because we just have 7 staff, and so we had 60 countries, so that happens a lot to us. But I do want to say this. I hear a lot. People don't want to learn English. They don't learn English. They won't speak English, and it's the number one thing that everybody asks for. And I know you hear that. Everybody wants to learn English. They want to learn it, but there are different levels of the ability to learn when you're an adult and what you've learned in your own country. So some people will catch on and do a lot, and some people my first thing I did was volunteer, and I was an English teacher, and I had this woman who came every week, and we only could do hi, how are you, and we had so many other things. It just didn't stick, And then other ones have learned a lot, and their English I can speak because I don't speak anything but German, and that's yet to help me at all. And so they will speak English well, but they'll say if somebody asks me at work, like at Walmart, for something, I just say I don't speak English. Because they're afraid to get caught into something. The same fear that I had, again, when I went to Germany and kind of knew German, but I was too scared. It's your insecurities. So.
Does that immigration officials have to also provide an interpreter? Do you know?
Immigration officials?
Yeah.
The ICE agents do not, no.
Oh, this is the right slide, I think.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes.
Any other questions?
Historically, what's the percentage of immigrants that come to this country that make it this pathway to citizenship that actually become citizens? What percent?
I don't know about the general immigrant status, like population. For refugees, 89.9% of refugees who've been in the country for 20 plus years become citizens. And they vote at a 75% voter participation rate, which is higher than our native-born rate for sure. And it does take some of our clients longer than that 5-year minimum because they have to pass a test in English, they have to pay for the application. And so we do have clients who it takes, 15 years, but about 90% of refugees do eventually become citizens. And they are some of the most patriotic citizens I've ever met too, because they're finally able to call a country home and be proud to be able to, participate democratically here. It's pretty awesome going to the polls with them for the first time.
To tag on that, I would, my other job after the English was helping people with a job, since that was the number one thing with diversity visa lottery winners. No money, need a job. And then I'd do their resume. You did that? You were in charge of the entire soccer association for all of Algeria or Morocco, and you chose to come here. Why did you come here? And their English is pretty okay. Why did you come here? It's for my kids. It's really, really hard. This is the land. This is it. I'm happy to be here. Although we did see people who were choosing to come here and had these higher jobs. They didn't realize how expensive everything was and how hard it would be. And maybe you were a doctor. We had many people coming with doctors and lawyers. And if your English is not up here or the certification, it's not there. But they said often, I don't dare tell my family. They would say, they would not believe me that it's hard here. Not believe me.
So the 10% that don't become citizens, they can live here their entire lives and never be a citizen.
Yep, they'll stay
on a green card?
They'll stay on a green card, exactly, yeah. But there'll be limitations.
So citizenship isn't the number one priority for staying here.
It doesn't need to be, although it is a big priority for a lot of our clients eventually. But you do not need citizenship to stay, but it does restrict your rights. So, you're not allowed to vote if you're not a citizen. You're not allowed to hold a job that requires citizenship. As a green card holder, you can join the military. But yeah, there are a lot of reasons why people want to become citizens. Maybe it takes them a while.
We've noticed that we have a lot of people wanting to be citizens, and I would say almost all of ours after the 5-year are coming for citizenship tests and to practice. But again, diversity visa lottery winners have a little bit more education. It's different if you're a refugee and have been in a refugee camp for 12 years and never learned to read and write in your own language, and if you've come here and have at least a high school education. So they are often becoming citizens. They're also the reason why would you not stay on if it wasn't an issue? Now, people who have been a long time are like, okay, now I need to do it. They're just scared of the test. I mean, it's a lot. If we had to take that test, there is definitely studying. I hear people practicing all the time in our office.
I came in late. How is your organization funded?
Our organization is funded on individual donations. We have some grants. We only had a city grant that we lost, but we did not need to lose any staff, and we increased.
That's very different for us. In 2024, 74% of our funding came from the federal government through the State Department for our refugee work, through the Department of Health and Human Services, and the State Department. A lot of that federal funding has gone away, although for some of our other programs, we get state and city funding, we get smaller grants, and then we also do get private donations as well.
When you say a lot of it has gone away, what do you mean?
Basically all of it. We just recently got an announcement that we're closing our health and wellness program because of it's lost its funding through the Department of Health and Human Services. So we did, we started 2025 with about 128 staff members, I think, and we're down to about 60 now. So, but I guess there are ways, if anyone's interested in getting involved or really just learning more, because you all already have done that by attending last week's session and this session. Thank you so much for listening to us for a long time. I always encourage people to stay informed about more local and state legislation as well, because if you are in this sort of political advocacy world, I'm sure you all know about calling your legislators to advocate for different legislation that you care about. And I have sort of burnt out on that federally, and I think a lot of the work can be done more locally. And like we said, Columbus is known as a welcoming city. And we want to keep Columbus a welcoming city. So you can always make your own opinions on all of these state bills, but I encourage you to look into them and learn a little bit more about them. You can also sign up for Church World Service, which is our national agency. They have a State of Play newsletter. They send it every day, so it's a little bit much. But it does really keep you up to date on all things immigration in terms of immigration policy, refugee policy, what's happening in that world. Sharing accurate narratives is so important right now when there's so much misinformation going around about who our new neighbors are. Support partner organizations. Like Diane said, our clients also access other benefits and other support not directly from an immigrant agency. So we had an awesome partnership with NEMAP for the past year, so you can support NEMAP. Your local food banks and food pantries have been so helpful, local job programs, apprenticeship programs. And if you like to do advocacy work, the Central Ohio Workers Center has been doing a cool one, letting businesses know their Fourth Amendment rights, which could help protect their employees in case of a raid by immigration enforcement, if that's something that you're interested in learning about or doing.
Can I ask another question? No? Do you have a sense of what, I know there's still people trying to flee from wherever. Do you have a sense of where in the world the doors are open for people?
I mean, there are other countries that do resettlement, Canada, Australia, places in Europe, although the United States was the main country accepting refugees. So a lot of those people truly have just, like, they're just stuck where they are. And if you are a refugee and you're in the middle of the process of that resettlement in the United States, like you're going through the security checks, you can't simultaneously be doing the same thing for a different country. So there are people who are maybe halfway through this process, which is, 7-ish years, halfway through saying, okay, should I start over somewhere else or should I just try to wait it out? And that's a really hard decision, obviously, for families, especially if they have loved ones in the United States already. Yeah.
What's the definition between a welcoming city and a sanctuary city?
Do you know this?
I was using welcoming city as like we're a welcoming city, less so like the legal definition.
I think some of the people say welcoming city in place of sanctuary city, which means, and I don't know if it's even enforceable now. I don't think it is, but a sanctuary city was one that you could go there, and if you were undocumented, you would be able to still get services.
And like one of the main things about sanctuary cities is that local law enforcement would not cooperate with immigration enforcement. Which is one of the bills, actually, that I mentioned, the state bills. Yeah.
You were talking about misinformation, and I think so often people have the opinion that there are immigrants that come that want to take, or refugees, whatever the category is, that want to take advantage of the system, and you hear this kind of talk all the time. But I know you have real stories where that's not the case. So what do you say to someone that asks that question?
I had that question. I used to work for Goodwill before there too, and there we didn't have as many immigrants that we were helping. It's the nonprofit part of Goodwill in the workforce development part. There were at Goodwill there's a huge workforce program to help people with jobs. The stores help pay for that, so I think that's often said of anybody who uses any of the benefits. Are there people, if we're going to do that, we have to make sure the people who are taking advantage of the system aren't there. So there are people always that I think there's always people who are taking advantage of the system, but even as far as like the immigrants where we have free things, all the time that we have free things, that is not the majority, but there are always some. But we also know, too, Nora, you've been coming now for 10 years. This is not for you, okay? Because we know who's here. This is who here. But it's especially hard, though. I say especially hard for immigrants to take advantage of the system. It's not an easy system. It's not an easy system, and it's too hard to what I see more often is that immigrants do not know that there is help here. We have a pastor from the Congo who comes to our church, and they've been here about 12 years, and they started out in Texas, and he said, Diane, I went every Sunday I went to church, and no one spoke to me for 2 years. And he said, and somebody said, is there a way I can help you? And he said, I didn't know that there were places that you could get free English classes. I didn't know there were free English classes. I mean, that's not a government program. But it's things like that. You have free, you have English classes. You can go to the library. We teach about going to the library and we take people on field trips. You can go here, all these things for free. This is because everybody, you get your first paycheck, about the taxes. What are taxes for? This is what our taxes do, This is why we have good roads here. I don't know.
And I always like to point out that, clients do use public benefits, especially within, the first couple of years of being here, because that's what you do when you move somewhere new. You need to find some support. They're also paying into the system. So they are not just taking, they're giving back. And research shows that refugees will give back into the system more than they take within 15 years. And so we are benefiting economically from our immigrant neighbors. We see undocumented immigrants paying taxes, and they can't access almost 100% of those benefits. So they're just paying into the system. And it's always been my experience that people are very excited to start their new lives and become successful on their own.
There's another thing too. If you have a green card and you want to be a citizen, we hear this all the time. And people are like, I don't want to be on benefits. You are penalized for taking advantage of all the different things. So, not to do Section 8 housing, not to do some of these things, it can keep you from getting becoming a citizen. And people are really scared about that. The other thing is about the safety. Like on Riverview Drive, those were really affordable apartments. And I remember our landlord who let us stay there for free. He was like, this is one of the safest places on the street because nobody wants to get in trouble. You do not want to get in trouble. Who's getting deported? People who get into trouble. It's a big, big thing. But it's also a bad thing when you have somebody who has had something bad happen to them. They will not report it, do not want to get in trouble themselves, or they don't want to get their friend in trouble because people know them. You got them in trouble. It's hard.
Yeah, I once had a client who wouldn't jaywalk across the street with me because she was worried about getting in trouble, which I was like, oh yeah, I probably should not be jaywalking with a client. But we sat at the stop. We waited until the Walkman came on. And
that's got to be hard because you lived in New York City.
Oh yeah, jaywalking is part of my personality now, so...
If you want to hear we have stories all the time. You have stories all the time. We have stories all the time. I like to tell one of Aisha was the one I told about her different things and her being in a household. But also, I had somebody he was an engineer in his country. He came here. His English wasn't very good. He got a job at Stanley Electric, working on the line. He knew about electricity and eventually just practiced his English. He moved up a little bit and then learned about, I'm not going to be an engineer, but I can be an electrician. He went to the union, passed right through all the journeyman things, and they were like, you know everything to become the full-fledged journeyman. And after 2 years, he was making $50 an hour. So that's just one. But I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just going to say has been on the screen for a moment. The one I really want to point out is that we have our World Refugee Day block party in June, which is always really, really fun. Because a lot of what we've talked about is kind of the doom and gloom of what's happening with immigrants right now, but it's so important to celebrate our community and diversity in our community as well. So this is an opportunity to do that.
You have a date? You have a June something?
Yeah, June 20th. And it's going to be from 11 to 2. All the information will be on our website, and I can send it
In your parking lot?
to y'all in our parking lot. There'll be lots of good food and music. If that doesn't bring you, then I don't know what will, but lots of good food. June 20th, which is World Refugee Day, in case you forget the date. That's what it is.
I was just going to ask, other than doing a block party, how do you remain hopeful and not doom and gloom yourself, especially at an organization where you're half the size of what you were before? I mean,
Yeah, that is very hard. It's sad because we have motion censored lighting, and so sometimes when the office is empty, the lights will turn off, or like one side of the building will turn off because nobody's over there. So that we need to get that fixed because that's not helping our morale. I think that I'm able to still see the small success stories with our clients and even the staff who came as refugees. We have a board on our wall in my office that's the good things of April or the good things of May. And we write down all of the good things that have happened to us or to our clients. So even something small like we had a client, she has 11 children. 11 children. And her oldest just got Student of the Month at her high school. And so there are just small things that I think keep you going. But I do get down sometimes for sure. But it's great to come out to communities and community events like this and try to spread a message that keeps me hopeful as well.
I feel like we have a lot of people coming, and we hear so many good stories that unless they're, because it's a little bit less, it's less hard. It's still hard. It's still really hard. But there are people coming in a lot. I got a job. They bring food. I just had a baby. I just got married. And then we see people. It doesn't stop. Right before I came here, I forgot my handouts, and I ran back in, and Tanya 2, because there's Tanya 1 and there's Tanya 2. Tanya 2 is there. They have the same exact name. And she was like, Diane, how are you? I mean, I've seen her kids since this high, and now they're one of them is in college now. And anyway, so we get to see each other for a long time, yet we continue to meet new people and just hear the stories of how they are doing. One of the things that we have done, because other immigrant organizations have had to cut back, and our job program is what's growing. We've gone from 2 now to 4, and that's a lot for us. We have another site in Northland, and there are so many people from Haiti and Congo have been here for multiple years, and they kind of, over time, you can only help so long, and these are people who slipped through the cracks. So we're not getting as many new people in. We have many people in Columbus who need help, and it takes longer. So we have a location at Ascension Lutheran that we started on Friday, and people are coming in. We have an interpreter from Refugee Women in Action because and we have a wait list of 70 people waiting to just get a job. But these are people who the English is hard. You're still wearing sandals. We're like, you can't wear sandals. Okay, let's help you with this. And I mean, we're talking so basic, and it just takes a while. And there are people who just can't wait to hire them. But anyway.
What part of the world, Middle Eastern, Central Eastern Africa, Southern Hemisphere, would you say the largest percentage of people who come in are from?
It's a little different for both of our organizations since the statuses are different. Most of our clients come from Somalia, Bhutan, they used to, not really so much anymore, Bhutan, Somalia, Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Syria.
Ours are depending where the diversity visa lottery is and how word gets out. So ours is Algeria, which is in Middle East, North Africa. So, and we have a lot of Muslim. Most everybody who's coming is Muslim. If you look at the demographics for our city, it's Spanish speaking. It's those countries. Mm-hmm. The reason why we have so many Algerian, we didn't. We had mostly Bangladesh. And in 2019, somebody posted, if you win the lottery, the diversity visa lottery, move to Columbus, move to Riverview Drive. They have good apartments, and go to the Riverview International Center. And 2 weeks later, we had 7 families from Louisiana and 3 families from Pittsburgh because they weren't doing so well in those areas. And then when the lottery opened, just a few months later, we just kept having Algerian after Algerian, and then we hired Hamida in 2021, and she is like a superwoman, and now people say if you win the lottery, go to Columbus and see Hamida. So when Hamida goes home to visit her family, people come and see her in the village. So I won the lottery. What can you tell me? Wait till you get to the United States. So.
Yes, what percentage of your clientele results from secondary resettlement when coming elsewhere in the States?
Ours used to be smaller because a lot of our work was direct resettlement, although now, I guess like we've been talking about, we have people coming to Columbus because we have a good reputation and we have jobs. So even if they're refugees who are resettled elsewhere, they may come to Columbus a year or two after that. Because of the opportunities that we have. And maybe they won't settle in Columbus, or they'll settle, maybe in Hilliard or West Jefferson, where we have a lot of jobs with like Amazon and Intel and all those places.
And we don't have we did for that time Algerian, but we mostly don't, because we still get a lot of Algerians, but they're coming directly here first. I'm so aware of your time, and I'm just a little worried about it. Should I not be worrying about it?
I don't know. I know we don't want to go over too long, but I don't want to cut off if anyone else has any itching questions. Yes.
Just curious. Are we still approximately second in Somalian population to Minneapolis, or is that different?
We are, yes, yep. Second behind Minneapolis for the Somali population. And I don't know if you guys know where Bhutan is. It's like right next to Nepal. It's a very small country there. We actually have the largest Bhutanese population in Columbus in the world outside of the country of Bhutan. So if you've never had Nepali Bhutanese food before, really good. They have these dumplings called momos. Highly recommend. And there are lots of restaurants around here because we have such a large population. So,
speaking of, I brought a handout. It's put out by the Columbus Food Letter, and it has the restaurants of the world all over Columbus. If you want to patronize them here, they said we can share them. You can have it.
Yeah,
too.
the easiest and tastiest way to support immigrants and refugees, for sure.
We have a group that goes, every
Well, it was every month. Now it's about
To a different
2 months to an ethnic restaurant.
Oh, yeah. It's been
So that'd be great to have, yeah.
I bet. Well, yeah, if you haven't done momos or Nepali food yet, you should definitely go. Highly recommend. Yes.
How did the border policy under the previous administration affect your type of organizations nationwide?
It less so affected us because we didn't get any money to help asylum seekers who came through the southern border. We haven't for the last, almost 5 years now. So we didn't have that many people coming to us directly from the southern border.
What about nationwide?
Nationwide, it severely impacted who was seeking help and what access to support they had.
It seems to me like it can be overwhelming.
mean, how many people are coming over that our country is overwhelmed?
Just to provide any services at all.
Oh, that's funny, because I was thinking of the previous administration. They were even, in my opinion of it, clamping down on border crossing. So I understand now, like, how many people are coming over. A lot of the people who come over through the southern border who are seeking asylum, they have existing community support already here. So not everyone that comes over the border or comes into a port of entry, or even refugees, really need our support all the time. And these are some of the most resilient people. So even if you help them within, the first month find an apartment, after that, you might never see them again because they have become self-sufficient, they found their own jobs. And so it's a lot of work, of course, when you have a lot of clients, but I've never found it overwhelming.
I think if you're asking, like, are we overwhelmed with the people coming? I think they're not really coming to our office. Maybe that's...
I'm not really talking you're individually. I'm talking as a large, the United States is large, and all of this takes funding, every bit of it, and I don't know if we can just handle that much funding.
Well, I do think it's
not
good.
that I have a big heart and I give things away, and I don't mean in that respect. I mean, if you can plan ahead for a project, you can probably do a better job at it, and rather than having to have the project come first and try to figure out a way to solve it.
You mean like how someone comes? Like if they come...
No, I'm talking about, it's not, I'm not talking individual. I'm talking just groups of big numbers. Big numbers they're hard to solve.
That's true. I definitely can't argue with you there. I think based on what we've seen with immigrants, it does take funding. They pay that back, and so and more. So while we are fronting the money, that money is coming back to us sometimes twofold in the end. We also...
Why did you have to cut your staff?
Oh, because that was...
No, she's taking more money in, she said.
No.
As an economy.
The economy.
They're giving back to the economy, they're giving back to the government.
Through taxes, like this
Through
numbers,
taxes.
these numbers here.
Yeah.
And long-term.
But then
Yeah.
federal funding for organizations that support immigrants has been.
Yeah. And that money hasn't gone away, that money was sent to a different... It's not like we don't have that money in the government. That money was sent to a different department to do different things.
It's falling over Iran right now.
Yeah, I was going to say that part out loud.
So for example, the money she's talking about, like in 2019, the numbers were really counted. Immigrant households earned $7.4 billion. So $1.4 billion went to federal taxes, $712 million went to state and local taxes, our area here. And that left $5.3 billion left in spending power. And if they live here, their people are spending here. I don't know if that helps, but that's the money you're talking about.
It is a real concern, though, I think. And people are concerned, like, oh, we're spending a lot of money to help people who weren't from here, who want to come here, or in our case, a lot of times, were forced to flee their home, and so they're looking for a new home. I think that's definitely a real concern. When you look at the benefits, though, of immigration, I'm not even talking about the humanitarian benefits. It does help us to bring in people. They take jobs that we don't have, or we won't take ourselves. They pay back into our systems. They give us good food. And so I think if we look at sort of the cost benefit, and studies have for years now, we are gaining more than we are spending. in many different ways.
And
Fiscally,
it's not to get advertised, though.
no, of
What you
course.
see is the cost.
Right.
You don't see is the benefits.
Right.
And the studies that indicate that there are serious benefits to the country
Yeah,
don't tend to get publicized.
yeah.
Did you have, you've had your hand up for
We need to look around and/or look in the mirror and think about our own histories. Our families coming here, however many generations ago, we haven't been sitting here for generations collecting on the dole, have we? Our people became citizens, found work, paid taxes, built this country. Why are the newer people coming any different? Of course, there's always some abuse.
Because it was organized back then.
Well,
You can't-
maybe even less than that. There's some difference.
Though I think it's good to,
Statue of Liberty's there.
yeah, good to remember what Doug brought up last week of the parable with all of the different perspectives, that there can be this true perspective which is also incomplete, not the whole story, and then you have to check someone else to find a different perspective. When you're talking about what's the economy and benefit of the entire country, that's a big picture to look at, and we can only speak to what we have seen and experienced.
I do just want to note, talking about something, a system being organized or not. The ways that our clients come to us, they are usually going through a 7 to 10 year process to come here. We know their names before they even arrive in the United States. The government has evidence of where they lived. They've made sure that there's no kind of security check. Refugees are some of the most vetted people in the entire world. And so a lot of the ways that immigrants come here is very organized. It's full of red tape, sometimes meaning that it takes 10 years to get here because of that. And if we're looking back to, Ellis Island, people were arriving with no documentation. Right. And so most immigrants who come here come through an incredibly arduous process to be here and to stay here. Even if you're an asylum seeker and you arrived in the United States without going through that process, they do that. They go through a mini process of that while they're in detention, and then they continue to get, apply for a visa and show all of this supporting documentation that they are going to be a good addition to the United States. Of course, we do see people come who don't do that, but that is, like Diane said, the exception to the rule, I guess, rather than how the system works.
This, we could keep talking about this for hours, but I do want to, and I didn't want to cut it off early because I think this is some good conversation to have, but I want to respect everyone's time too. So thank you so much for the passion that you bring in your work and the passion that you brought tonight. Thank you so much for...
We have Chris's information is up here. Donate to help Chris. There's a QR code. And we have ours too. We both of us take volunteers. We take a lot of volunteers. And we have a thing that you can either directly give to help our neighbors that goes directly to them or to help the RIC for the programs.